3-1 at home. Washington 7-3 on the season, 3-2 on the road. Philadelphia healthy heading into the game. A couple of players are dinged up, including cornerback Darius Slay and wide receiver Devonta Smith. They all sat out Monday's practice, but are good to play tonight. For Washington, cornerback Marshawn Lattimore is out with a hamstring injury. Good news, though, for running back Brian Robinson Jr. He's off the injury report and will return to the lineup. Kicker Austin Siebert is out. Zane Gonzalez will replace him in the lineup. It's a battle of NFC East rivals, with the Eagles riding a 5-game winning streak and the Commanders coming off a loss. Both teams enter the game with 2-0 records against divisional opponents this season. Bundle auto and home, renters or condo, and save with Progressive. That's the SportsGrid Sports Flash. I'm Chuck Sanders.
Oh no, my phone.
Hear that? It's the sound of a skater dropping her phone and smashing it on the ice. Yep, it's definitely broken. But at Verizon, we got you. This holiday, trade in any phone, any condition from one of our top brands and get a new Samsung Galaxy S24 Plus on Unlimited Ultimate and Watch 7 and Tab S9 FE 5G. That's over $1,800 in value. So you'll save big on 3 great gifts. Only at Verizon. Service plan required for watch and tablet. Over $1,800 value based on phone, watch, and tablet. Trade in and additional terms apply. See Verizon.com for details.
Some people just know they could save hundreds on car insurance by checking Allstate first. Like you know to check the propane tank on your grill first before hosting a tailgate.
Let's fire up.
Here, let me try. Seriously? You didn't check the propane? Who wants chips?
Yeah, checking first is smart. So check Allstate first for a quote that could save you hundreds.
Salt and vinegar.
You're in good hands with Allstate.
Savings vary. Subject to terms, conditions, and availability. Allstate Fire and Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates, Northbrook, Illinois.
No way football is playing in the fall and winter because the hits don't hurt as much when you're numb. Get the lowdown on all the sports action coming up right here. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. You're listening to Football Full Circle with Scott Wetzel and Ben Stevens.
We welcome you to a Thursday, live right here on Football Full Circle. It is FFC, all a part of the SportsGrid Radio Network in Sirius XM. He is Scott Wetzel. I am Ben Stevens. This Thursday kicks off a new week in the National Football League. Week number 11 begins tonight with an awesome short week Thursday night football game and an impactful one. It's a battle for the top spot in the NFC East between the Philadelphia Eagles and the Washington Commanders. We'll look at tonight in the city of brotherly love. Short week Thursday night football game, but a significant divisional duel to decide first place in the divisional standings. We'll also set the stage for the rest of what Week 11 has in store following the first full day of practice on a Wednesday for every team that will compete on Sunday and beyond. Scott, it's a huge Thursday here on Football Full Circle. Should be a good one.
Yeah, it should be a great week, right? We got 3 really monster games. You know, tonight's game, you got the Buffalo-Kansas City game, Pittsburgh-Baltimore. Oddly enough, none of the 3 are on the Sunday night, which is supposed to be like the prime time perfect spot, right? So NBC kind of lost out on that one, but still, that's okay. They're lost in our game because we can at least watch this one all by itself. So it should be a lot of fun. Got some great props, some interesting numbers that I really like, some goofy ones, some other ones that I think are pretty solid. Yep. So should be a good week. Kick off week number 11 of the NFL season tonight.
It will be a great week indeed. So, Scott, as we get ready for Thursday night football, let's take that early look at what we are going to see between the Eagles and the Commanders. Not just what this game is going to have for us, but what it represents and what it will mean for the final stretch of this NFL season. Philadelphia enters at home on a 5-game win streak, 7-2, a half game in front of Washington in the NFC East standings. The Commanders dropping just their 3rd game of the season a week ago against Pittsburgh, and only by a single point. But because of the Washington loss and the Philadelphia win, 5 consecutive for the Birds, the Eagles enter this NFC East duel with at half-game lead in the standings. And it's a 3.5-point spread in favor of Philadelphia tonight. Short week Thursday night football game. Not a long trip for Washington by any means from Landover to Philadelphia. That should help on the short week. but a pretty lofty total on this Thursday night football game of 48.5. 3.5 point spread in favor of the home team, that being the Eagles, and that total nearing 50. Scott, what are the numbers telling you about this Thursday night game?
Yeah, expecting a shootout. I tell you, I don't think we are. FanDuel's got it up to 49.5 when I checked it just a couple of moments ago. Maybe it's dropped back down to 48.5, but it was 48 yesterday. I'm at the 49, so I said close to 50 one way or the other. Although 49 is kind of a magic number, right? 7 touchdowns would be 49. You want to kind of get over the 49 if you're going with the under there. I don't know if we're going to get that kind of shootout. The Philadelphia defense, you mentioned 5 straight wins. They've finally picked up their play a little bit. Washington, generally speaking, likes to run the ball. I admit I did like the under last week against Pittsburgh, and it went over, but I don't know if we get that on a short week. Thursday night football games, for the most part, have been about 50-50. A couple of games actually over. All the other primetime days have gone under, but these Thursday nights have been 23 and 21 over the last 43 games or 44 games. Yeah. So, I don't know if we're going to get to the 50. I think it's going to be more 24-17, 41, 42, 43 points. I don't think it'd be the shootout. I really don't.
What's really interesting, Scott, is one of the reasons that Philadelphia is feeling really good entering this game, not just back atop the NFC East, now moving in front of Washington, it's because of how they have looked on this 5-game win streak. And for some of it, it hasn't been overly optimistic, despite winning football games against the Browns off of the bye that began the 5-game win streak as nearly an 8.5-point home favorite. That game was decided by a single score late in the fourth quarter. 2 weeks ago against Jacksonville, a bad blown call against Saquon Barkley that the Jags scooped and scored for a touchdown. But some mismanaged and poor coaching decisions by Nick Sirianni kept that game way more competitive than it needed. And again, the Eagles were more than a touchdown favorite at home against a 2-win Jacksonville team. But those were the only non-covers in this 5-game win streak. They went to Cincinnati as a slight underdog against the Bengals, won outright by 20 points. And then in their 2 covers as a favorite, both last week in Dallas, and we understand the Cowboys are bad, and a few weeks prior to that at home against the Giants, who by no means are great either. The Eagles have been in command. They have covered in both of those games as a favorite, winning by at least 25 points and holding their NFC East divisional foes, the Cowboys and the Giants, to a total of 9 points in those 2 games. Now, the Giants and the Cowboys are not even holding a candle to the success the Commanders have shown this season. I don't think Washington stays under double digits, but Scott, it's that defense for Philadelphia coming on in the last month with Vic Fangio that has really led a lot around the Eagles to believe not only are they the deserved favorites in the NFC East, but a true conference contender in the NFC as a whole once again.
Yeah, I might even go back to week number 3, Ben. That's really, for me, when it kind of turned around for Philadelphia. Remember, they were playing the Saints. Saints had scored, 91 points in their first 2 games, blew out Dallas. Looked like they were going to be the surprise team in the NFC. And then Philadelphia goes into New Orleans and just shuts them down cold, just cold. So that game, at least, if it didn't turn around then, at least showed the world what the Philadelphia defense was capable of. And then a couple of games later, it finally did kind of kick in, as you alluded to there. So this is the team, with A.J. Brown back, with Brown, Eagles 6-0, only 1-2 without him. They scored nearly twice as many points when he's in the lineup as you would figure it would be. But, it is a clear demarcation line when he's playing and when he's not playing. So this healthy Eagle team, Barkley healthy, doing what he's doing, is the team that we think could challenge, I think, Detroit and San Francisco. But, I put them ahead of Green Bay. Won't put them ahead of Detroit, and might not even put them ahead of San Francisco, but wouldn't shock me if they won against either of those 2 teams in the postseason.
You look at those conference numbers now, Philadelphia has moved in front of the 49ers, plus 430 on the Birds, plus 550 for the Niners. The Lions remain the short favorites in the NFC, the only one sub $2 at plus 195. Scott, to your point about A.J. Brown, huge week last week in Dallas. They look so much better offensively with him in the fold. But really, Jalen Hurts has been playing mostly clean football. He's been great with his legs as well. 8 touchdowns on the ground in the last 4 for Philadelphia. He has scored in 5 of the last 6. It's not just been the defense holding opponents down in this 5-game win streak. They scored 28 2 weeks ago against Jacksonville, 34 last week on the road in Dallas, and it probably could have been a lot more had the Cowboys even kept it remotely competitive. They scored 37 to blow out the Bengals, who were starting to find their resurgence as well, to win that game by 20 points, 28 against the Giants. And again, had they needed more, they probably would have found more. This Philadelphia team is playing really well. 5-game win streak for the Eagles. But Scott, Washington continues to be a great team. Historic start to the season for the rookie Jaden Daniels. First-year head coach in this franchise in terms of Dan Quinn, but a successful head coach at previous stops in Atlanta. Offensive mind of Cliff Kingsbury seems to be doing very, very well. Let's not overlook the Commanders in this spot. Yes, 3 losses. In their last 2, though, they have been incredibly competitive against the Ravens. They have looked the ilk of a playoff team, and yes, they did lose last week at home as a slight favorite, but just by a single point against the Steelers team that has won all 3 games with Russell Wilson. I expect Washington to keep this game competitive, even if I think Philadelphia is the right side.
Yeah, listen, even when Washington wasn't any good and Philadelphia was good, they always gave fits to the Eagles.
Yeah.
So, being a division game, I would be shocked if this was a blowout. So, we could talk a little bit more about it on the other side. But you can make the case, though, Ben, for Washington, maybe it's better if they lose tonight. I'll explain when we come back.
Oh, I look forward to hearing that theory, Scott, as we get things rolling to preview and break down Thursday Night Football. Scott's theory on the outcome and the players that will dictate it in the prop market next.
Fall is coming. Don't look like an idiot at work. Know your stuff. Football and everything else. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network.
Amazon has launched a low-cost online storefront featuring electronics, apparel, and other products priced at under $20.
With the SportsGrid News Flash, I'm Trey Westerberg.
This update brought to you by Cintas. It's an effort to compete with discount retailers that have increasingly encroached on the e-commerce giant's turf. The new Amazon Hall storefront will mostly feature products that cost less than $10 and offer free delivery on orders over $25. Many of the available products on the storefront resemble the types of items typically found on Shein and Temu, the China-founded e-commerce platforms that have grown in popularity in recent years. Republicans have won enough seats to keep control of the House of Representatives, clinching a unified GOP government in Washington. Republicans are projected to hit the 218-seat threshold in the House, and Republicans have also won at least 52 seats in the Senate, with incumbent Pennsylvania Democrat Bob Casey trailing Republican Dave McCormick with a dwindling number of votes left to count.
I'm Trey Westerberg with the SportsGrid News Flash.
Every day, Cintas service reps help businesses get ready for the workday. They provide freshly laundered workwear delivered every week. Mats, mops, restroom and cleaning supplies. First aid and safety products to help your employees stay safe. They even test and inspect fire extinguishers and emergency lights. Cintas helps keep your business running smoothly. See what Cintas can do for you. Visit Cintas.com.
Oh, I'm ready!
And get ready for the workday.
You ever try fixing your car and realize you're missing that one part? Yeah, been there. That's why eBay's my go-to. They've got millions of parts guaranteed to fit. I'm talking brake pads for when yours have seen one too many miles of stop and go. Oil filters, because you don't mess around with your engine care. Even got this cold air intake on my watch list. I might just go for it. To keep the ride cool and your DIY streak high. Find all the parts you need at prices you'll love. Guaranteed to fit every time. eBay. Things people love. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply.
Fall is almost here. It's time to stow the lawnmower and get ready for all that glorious action coming your way. Stay tuned to SportsGrid for all the strategies, angles, and info you need to get the winning edge. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. You're listening to Football Full Circle with Scott Wetzel and Ben Stevens.
Live right here on Football Full Circle, it is FFC. So, Scott, we're previewing Thursday Night Football to kick off week number 11. And it's not your usual short week Thursday Night Football game. It's a divisional duel that will decide, at least for the moment, the top spot in the NFC East division. In Philadelphia, at Lincoln Financial Field. The Eagles a 3.5-point home favorite, and that total has worked its way up by a point, 49.5 on this game day. Thursday was 48 and a hook earlier on this Thursday morning. Scott, you said right before the break, as we were coming up on that commercial break, it might actually behoove the Commanders to lose this football game. And you said you would explain, so please do.
Yeah. You got to look at the bigger picture. Are the Commanders going to win the Super Bowl this year? Probably not, right? Are they going to even be the number one seed? They would have they have three losses. Detroit has only one. They'd have to make up 2 games and then hope you win the tiebreaker. Probably not, right? So if they lose, now they're going to be the second place team. You do whatever you do in the postseason, whether it's 1 and out, maybe you win a game, and you build towards next year. And more importantly, Ben, you don't get a first place schedule. Case in point, look at the Houston Texans, right? They were able to complete the deal last year. They win the division. They win a game in the first round, knocked out in the second round. Look at them this year with a first place schedule, 6-4. Now, they're the benefactor of being in the AFC South, so they're going to win that division more than likely. Washington doesn't have that luxury. Philadelphia figures to be really good next year. I think the Cowboys bounce back next year. So, why not? If you're really looking for the long haul, get the second place schedule. Get into the postseason. Get some experience in playoff football. But don't get in as the number one team, because then you're going to get the number one schedule. You play all those tough teams. You play Kansas City, you play Buffalo, you play San Francisco next year, however the schedule lays out. But it's a lot easier getting a second place schedule. So, unless you think they're going to win the Super Bowl this year, otherwise I would say it's better to lose, as crazy as it sounds. You still got a nice little cushion to get into the postseason. You don't have to worry about that and get in as a wild card team.
Yeah, Scott, I would say that there's a silver lining, right, to maybe not winning the division or not winning a Super Bowl, because not only do you show that progress in the promise of what can be, and hopefully for a very long time, which there really hasn't been for this Washington franchise in the last 2+ decades, you do have the benefit of what is going to come with this team and success right now. Is it the mountaintop? Not everybody can win a Lombardi trophy. Is it even a divisional championship? Listen, right now the Eagles are close to a $2.50 minus money favorite at minus 240, despite having just a half-game distinction at this moment. Part of that price is baked into the idea the Eagles are more than a field goal favorite tonight for the first of 2 meetings against Washington. They meet again week 16, third to last week of the year. That game will be in Landover. The early projected line has Philadelphia as a slight favorite at that point as well. And I do think, Scott, from the season outlook perspective, it is important to what you are saying. Philadelphia was expected, the preseason favorites, to win the division. Philadelphia was expected to contend for a conference championship once again, to look more like the 2022 Birds and not how they flamed out a season ago. The coordinators being back under Nick Sirianni, Kellen Moore, the bright offensive mind, Vic Fangio, highly regarded as one of the best defensive minds in the NFL in the past decade plus or so. That was the expectation for the Eagles. Slow to start, certainly matching that now. Washington did not have this. So the fact that Washington is already over its win total, 6.5 in some spots, 7.5 in others, or is a win away from doing so already entering week 11, speaks to what this team can be. And outside of that, Scott, even if they're not going to win the division or perhaps a conference crown, just to make the playoffs is certainly something to hang your hat on. And the Commanders are minus 800 right now to see the postseason.
Yeah, you're not going to think anything less of the Commanders and their future if they finish as a wild card versus a division winner. You might, if you're an Eagles fan, you might just say, well, what are we doing here? 2 straight years now, we can't win our own division. But for Washington, no. So that's, I know it's kind of weird, and you're not going to necessarily root for them to lose. All I'm saying is, in the bigger picture, it's not the worst thing. You said there's a silver lining to Washington not winning tonight. It's not the end of the world, no matter what happens, from here on out. That said, listen, I give them a chance. I'm probably going to take Philadelphia, just because they're the home team and they're playing so well. But it wouldn't shock me if the Commanders won tonight, obviously.
Yeah, and Scott, Washington has been a good underdog. They're 2-1-1 against the spread as a dog this year. But what's so fascinating about just being an underdog 4 times as a team with a rookie quarterback and a first-year head coach and staff and a win total of 6.5 or 7.5 preseason is the fact they haven't been an underdog in 4 consecutive games. In fact, the last time they were a dog was against Baltimore in that great game in Week 6 where they kept it closer. They did rise to the occasion. They just didn't win the game, lost by a touchdown as a touchdown underdog. And, Scott, that's really where Washington is entering tonight. Again, Philadelphia has covered 3 of 5 games on this 5-game win streak, but just twice as a favorite. The Commanders are going to keep this game close, and there is a lot to love for this Washington team the rest of this year, being a playoff team, and the schedule, by the way, not overly difficult for the Commanders to end out this season, and of course, what next year has.
Well, again, it goes back to what I was saying about, Washington next year, first place schedule, just like with the Houston Texans, who last year had a last place schedule, like Washington has. So it's not a lot of different games, but it's a couple of different games. Houston playing Detroit this weekend or last weekend. And they wouldn't have done that had they not been a first-place team. So, those 2 extra games in which you get first-place teams or last-place teams, it can make the difference.
No doubt about it. No doubt about it. And that will be part of the component for the Commanders. Scott, you were the first person to highlight this trend to me a long time ago, the fact that we're nearing 2 decades without a repeat champion in the NFC East. Both the Eagles and the Commanders, the only two good teams in this division, would qualify on continuing that trend, as the Cowboys, of course, were the divisional champs a year ago, and that's not happening this year. A great prop game as well. If a total is 49.5 for a short week Thursday night game, offense expected. We look at the player props next on Football Full Circle.
There's smart and there's not smart. Not smart is hope as a strategy. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. Keep it here and win. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. The SportsGrid Radio Network presents This Date in Sports History.
The man of the moment, the man of all time in the NFL.
1993, Don Shula becomes a coach with the most wins in NFL history, surpassing Papa Bear George Halas.
The team approach is, in my mind, what it's all about. You can have great individual players, and you need great individual players, but a player out there by himself can't get it done.
For SportsGrid Radio, I'm Mike DeMurgis.
The Technology Minute with George Capalbo.
In case you've been worried about AI taking your job and destroying the world economy, perhaps fear not. A large, well-known fast food chain is quietly dropping its AI-powered drive-through automated order-taking system after some mishaps.
Would you like extra sauce with your 2,100 orders of chicken nuggets?
Believe it or not, these are actual scenarios.
I'm sure you asked for 40 dozen pounds of butter.
The fatal flaw? Voice recognition AI that can't identify misidentified spoken orders.
I just want you to know that I have complete confidence in the long-term success of this mission. By the way, here is your 4-gallon van of bacon topped caramel ice cream.
Yahoo! Follow me at Capalbo on X and stay tuned to The Technology Minute for more cool stuff like this.
Carver and Lisi.
They have, no doubt about it, shut it down. You listen to some of those guys after that loss in Arizona, they have completely shut it down. Rodgers sounded like he couldn't get back in that bunker with the darkness retreat fast enough after that game on Sunday. He is so finished. They all are gutless.
It's Carver and Lisi with Mike Carver and Joe Lisi. Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 Pacific. On the SportsGrid Radio Network. Wherever you go, there you are. Download the SportsGrid mobile app and we'll be right there with you. So now you can get the winning edge anywhere. Even while the wife's talking to you. If you've got an earbud. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. You're listening to Football Full Circle with Scott Wetzel and Ben Stevens.
Live right here on Football Full Circle, it is FFC. He is Scott Wetzel. I am Ben Stevens. Great Thursday night football game to kick off week number 11 between Philadelphia and Washington. The Eagles, a 3.5-point home favorite against the Commanders. Again, total up there for a short week Thursday night game at 49.5. Scott, last week, great divisional duel as well. Not for the top spot in said division, but a great divisional duel nonetheless. The Bengals and the Ravens. Baltimore came back to win 35-34. Last week's total was the first in nearly 3 years that it featured a Thursday night short week game with an over-under greater than 50. This one nearly at that 50-point minimum, 49.5. So anytime the total is high, you can expect some offense. Quarterback comparison first. Jaden Daniels in his historic rookie season, 226.5 his passing yards prop. Jalen Hurts at 224.5. Both guys can utilize their athleticism and legs. Scott, what do you expect out of the quarterbacks tonight in Philly?
Well, first, you got to start with Hurts with a touchdown, right? I mean, it's now at minus 125. I looked last week because I was going to play it. It was only plus 110, plus 105. And I'm like, that's crazy. I'm not doing that, right? So what does he do? He scores like 5,000 touchdowns against the Cowboys. And now he's minus 125. 6-3, 9 games, 6 games he's had a touchdown. 3 he hasn't, admittedly. But you said it earlier, 8 touchdowns in his last 4 games. This is the quarterback, not the star running back, the quarterback. So you got to go Hurts, minus 125, put it in a parlay if the site that you use allows you to do that. I think he goes over the number passing as well. Yeah. Now that A.J. Brown is back, we talked about his numbers and how much this Eagles offense benefits with Brown in there, with him in there. It might not be the shootout, but we're going to get some points. And the weather, seemingly being okay in the Philadelphia area, I would go over the two and change for Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, and Scott, when I look at that number for Jalen Hurts, both his passing touchdown prop and his own price to hit pay dirt, I did bet the number last week at plus 105 is where I got it on FanDuel because it was the wrong price. And now that it's working, it was minus 110 earlier today, minus 120. That feels fitting. Jalen Hurts has scored 8 touchdowns in the last 4 games. He has scored in every game, multiple touchdowns in 3 of 4. He has scored in 5 of the last 6. He has scored in 6 of the 9 games overall this year for Philadelphia. Of course, you think of the tush push and the brotherly shove, but he has the athleticism just to pick up 15 yards and find pay dirt with his legs outside of that. If he was not playing quarterback, the number for a guy that finds pay dirt as often and as much as Jalen Hurts does, be minus 180. It'd be the Saquon Barkley price. It'd be the Derrick Henry number at closer to $2. So I still think you're getting a slight discount, even though it's working to stronger minus money at minus 120. And Scott, you said this earlier. You look at A.J. Brown. He has had 5 catches in 5 of the 6 games he has played in this year. Every time he has had at least 5 grabs, Scott, he has had 84 yards through the air. A big play downfield threat. His longest receiving prop tonight is at 28.5. Let's talk some of those running backs as well. Brian Robinson Jr. expected to return from Washington. He's missed the last 2 games with a hamstring injury. And, of course, Saquon Barkley has been great in his first year in Philadelphia. Scott, the running backs tonight, do any of those numbers intrigue you?
Yeah, the Barkley ones definitely do, Ben. As the saying goes, there's different ways to skin a cat. And I always, who skins a cat? I don't know where that expression came from, right? But, skin a cat. I love cats. Right? But, if you think the game is going to be close, as I do, I love the Barkley stuff. 111.5 yards is his rushing and receiving number. He's hit that 6 of his 9 games, Ben. All right, that's a pretty good number to start with, right? Well, then when you consider 2 of the games he didn't hit it were blowouts, so they didn't utilize him like they normally would. There's only really been 1 game, the Cleveland Browns game, in which it was a close game, and he didn't hit that number. So if you think he's going to hit that number, or if you think it's rather going to be a close game, Barkley over 111.5 yards receiving and rushing is a pretty good prop. I like that one a lot.
Completely agree, Scott. It's one of the numbers I looked at. Washington not bad against the pass. 5th best. Philadelphia even better. 3rd best passing defense in the NFL. The Commanders, though, are the 5th worst rushing defense in the National Football League. We saw both Jaylen Warren and Najee Harris, to an extent, have a good day last Sunday. Anytime Saquon Barkley has had at least 17 carries, he's done so in 6 games, 5 of the 6 over even his rushing yards prop of 92.5. A little bit more from Thursday night than the rest of the NFL. Next.
The winning edge. You've got it. But not everybody has it, because not everybody listens to us. But we're working on that. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network.
Progressive presents the SportsGrid Sports Flash. I'm Chuck Sanders. Thursday night football, the Eagles host the Commanders. Philadelphia 7-2, 3-1 at home. Washington 7-3 on the season, 3-2 on the road. Philadelphia healthy heading into the game. A couple of players are dinged up, including cornerback Darius Slay and wide receiver Devonta Smith. They all sat out Monday's practice, but are good to play tonight. For Washington, cornerback Marshawn Lattimore is out with a hamstring injury. Good news, though, for running back Brian Robinson Jr. He's off the injury report and will return to the lineup. Houston Astros second baseman Jose Altuve and Dodgers utility man Mookie Betts led the field of Silver Slugger honorees, picking up the award for the 7th time in their careers. Other recipients include MVP favorites Aaron Judge of the Yankees and Shohei Ohtani of the Dodgers, Vlad Guerrero Jr. of the Blue Jays. Bundle auto and home, renters or condo, and save with Progressive. That's the SportsGrid Sports Flash. I'm Chuck Sanders.
Shop early, save big all month long during Black Friday build-up at Lowe's. Right now, get select pre-lit artificial Christmas trees starting at just $59.98. Don't wait to save. Shop these deals today, in-store or online, because Lowe's knows deals. Discount taken at time of purchase while supplies last. Selection varies by location.
After you use Bounce Dryer sheets and realize how fresh, soft, less wrinkled, and less staticky your laundry can be, you'll every time. Like those socks that smell like they've been through a marathon. Or that blanket that's got wrinkles on its wrinkles. Maybe even your chatty coworker who keeps distracting you. Okay, Bounce Dryer sheets can't do it all. But for fresher, softer, better laundry,
Days are getting cooler and shadows are getting longer. You know what that means? It's football weather. So bundle up and keep it here for all the latest strategies and gridiron information. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. You're listening to Football Full Circle with Scott Wetzel and Ben Stevens.
A few closing thoughts and some final picks for Thursday night football between the Eagles and the Commanders, and then the other news and notes you need around the National Football League for the rest of week number 11. Scott, we were just talking about Saquon Barkley and how we expect him to both have a big night tonight against the Commanders. It is a strong suit for this Eagles team. Now let's highlight a couple of the guys on Washington. For Jaden Daniels, his efficiency that was historic to start the year, not just for rookie quarterbacks, but any quarterback in the National Football League. 71% completion percentage in his first 4 games. The only guy to go north of 70 in his first 4 since Tom Brady nearly 2 decades ago. It has cooled off just a little bit. It hasn't been bad, right? He hasn't been turning the football over or putting it in harm's way, but he has not gone above 70% completion in a single game in his last 5 that he has fully played in. And this Eagles defense, as we have shared, is returning. But if he is going to have a good night tonight, I think you can look at a couple of spots. Terry McLaurin on pace to have his best NFL career or NFL year of his career, and maybe even Zach Ertz, that safety valve at 35.5, making his return, or at least heading back to Philadelphia tonight to take on his former Eagles team.
Yeah, I always like, now it's been a couple of years since Ertz has been with Philadelphia. You have to stop in Arizona there, but I do like looking for little storylines like that. You know, these coaches have personalities more than what they show on the sidelines, and I can't help but think, all right, you know, a little check down anyway, and they really don't throw the ball deep, which is why he's had a whole lot of completions and not like 300 yards passing. So at 35.5 yards, boy, you get that in 2 receptions, and I think he's going to hit that. Even the McLaurin numbers really aren't that bad, and if we get the perceived shootout, and I think we will get some points, maybe Washington does throw the football just a little bit more. So I would lean more towards the Washington receiver over props than I would the Washington running props tonight.
Yeah, and that's how it looks as well, Scott, right? Like the Eagles are more than a field goal favorite at home. They should be in command of this game. At least that's what you might think, and then you can have Washington throwing the football a little bit more. Jaden Daniels' prop, as we shared, was 226.5. Outside of the Hail Mary game against Chicago, he has been under that number in his last two consecutively. Terry McLaurin, 60.5 is that receiving yards prop. Scott, he's gone over that in half of the 10 games this year for the Commanders, but when he has gone over 60.5, it hasn't just been like, 67 yards on 5 grabs. He has had at least 98 receiving yards in all 5 games that he has had more than 55, let alone 61 plus. To have 100 receiving yards tonight. And Philly's secondary is good. You got Darius Slay. You've got the 2 young rookies in Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean, who have been sensational early in their careers for Philadelphia. But for Terry McLaurin, to have 100 plus is plus 350. Even 80 plus is plus 184. 90 plus, plus 260. You could ladder Terry McLaurin a little bit if you expect him to have a big game tonight in Philadelphia.
That's not bad. I like that one. I found this little nugget. Same type of thinking. If you think McLaurin's going to have a good game, right? I mean, pretty much a consensus A.J. Brown's going to have a good game. Right? There's no way on national TV they're not going to go to A.J. Brown unless this guy's going to throw a fit, right? So how about this one, Ben? McLaurin and A.J. Brown to have only 25 yards receiving each half, plus 550. If you want to go Brown and Devontae Smith, 25 each half, they'll give you plus 750. But I like that one too, but I like one on each side. So McLaurin, 25 yards, that's not a lot of yards. And, when I first read it, I was like, that's a quarter, right? I was like, no, a half. Plus 550 on that? That's pretty good, no?
Yeah, I like that. I really do like that look. Certainly worth a sprinkle at such a large return. And Scott, Terry McLaurin has maybe been one of the more underrated receivers in the NFL. He got drafted to this Washington organization and has had an absolute revolving door of inconsistent quarterback play in his career. It's year number 6 for Terry McLaurin. In his first 5 years, he had at least 919 receiving yards in all 5. That his low, by the way, 919, was his rookie year. That means his previous 4, he's had at least 1,000. And again, not with even the quarterback play that Jaden Daniels has displayed this year. He's got the most receiving touchdowns that McLaurin has added in his 5-year NFL career so far. 7 that did come back in his rookie year. He's already just one touchdown away from matching his career best mark. And it's about to be game number 11 of this season for the Commanders. Plus 180, by the way, for Terry McLaurin to hit pay dirt tonight.
Wow, that's not bad. It just goes to show what a good quarterback will do for you, right? I mean, people thought McLaurin was pretty good, okay, but nothing, nothing over the top. You're not going to put him in your top 5 receivers, but put him with a good quarterback that can throw the football. Put him with a good head coach who knows what he's doing, and we're seeing the best of Terry McLaurin.
Yeah, he certainly is putting that on display this year. Again, it's going to be a great game tonight on this Thursday. One last check of the numbers. The Eagles, a 3.5-point favorite. Total now stands at 49.5, up ever so slightly from where it was earlier on this Thursday. Whoever wins takes control of the top spot in the NFC East. Philadelphia right now, minus 240 as the divisional favorites with that half-game lead over the Commanders at this moment. Both teams have 7 wins. Washington just 1 more loss and 1 more game played in total this year as well. 7-3 for the Commanders, 7-2 for the Eagles. And Scott, these two teams will do it again. Again, week number 16, third to last weekend of the NFL regular season. That one will be in Landover, and it's going to be a huge game by that point of the year as well.
Yeah, I'll give you one more, Ben. A.J. Brown, another prop. We talked about it.
Yeah.
FanDuel, anyway, is giving you his receptions at 5.5 plus odds, or you could go his receiving yards, 80.5. He's only had 6 receptions one time, 1 out of 6 games. But he's had the receiving yards 5 out of the 6 games. So it's not worth getting the plus odds to me for the 6 receptions, even though chances are he might get it tonight. I'll go with the over 80.5 yards because he's hit that 5 out of 6.
For sure, which is so crazy because bare minimum 5 receptions, he has had at least 84 receiving yards, and he's had over 100 in 3 of those 5 games. The only game that A.J. Brown did not go over his number is when he was banged up in that game against Jacksonville. Came out of the locker room from the half in the second half and pretty much went immediately back in. He had 2 grabs for 36 yards. It's got another way that you could approach A.J. Brown that I think is very sound. Of course, he's been doing it on limited quantity, if you will, right? And still going over those numbers of 84 plus. It's because he is the deep play threat, and in this offense, they will air it out. His longest reception in the 5 games where he has had at least 84 yards and thus 5 grabs, 29 yards. In 4 of those 5, 40 plus for the longest reception. That number tonight for A.J. Brown is 28.5. Another way of kind of skin the cat, if you will.
Right. And we all know we're going to do that, right? So A.J. Brown figures to have a big game tonight. That's the bottom line. But, sometimes you got to analyze these numbers, and figure out which is, why go with the 6 receptions? Because he's not getting 6 receptions without getting 80-plus yards. But he can get 80-plus yards without getting 6 receptions. So you just got to think these things out there a little bit.
For sure. And that's that's a great way of looking at it. There are some players that the workload is there, but the actual yardage might not be. So you can kind of break it down from targets into receptions. There are some players that only need a few receptions to get over that yardage. There's many different ways of going to 81 plus. There's only one way of getting over 5.5. He's got to catch the ball at least 6 times. So it's going to be a great game tonight on this Thursday in the NFC East. The Eagles minus 240 to win the division. Washington now the second best price at plus 195. Don't feel bad for the Commanders. Minus 800 to be a playoff team this year when nobody really expected that entering this season. Other news around the NFL, some quarterback changes and some quarterback injury updates come your way up next.
Yeah, it's getting cooler. Football weather is here. Stay tuned for all the latest odds, strategies, and info. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network.
Amazon has launched a low-cost online storefront featuring electronics, apparel, and other products priced at under $20.
With the SportsGrid News Flash, I'm Trey Westerberg.
This update brought to you by Cintas. It's an effort to compete with discount retailers that have increasingly encroached on the e-commerce giant's turf. The new Amazon Hall storefront will mostly feature products that cost less than $10 and offer free delivery on orders over $25. Many of the available products on the storefront resemble the types of items typically found on Shein and Temu, the China-founded e-commerce platforms that have grown in popularity in recent years. Republicans have won enough seats to keep control of the House of Representatives, clinching a unified GOP government in Washington. Republicans are projected to hit the 218-seat threshold in the House, and Republicans have also won at least 52 seats in the Senate, with incumbent Pennsylvania Democrat Bob Casey trailing Republican Dave McCormick with a dwindling number of votes left to count.
I'm Trey Westerberg with the SportsGrid News Flash.
Lowe's honors our military community this Veterans Day and every day. To say thank you, verified military members, veterans, and their spouses get 10% off everyday purchases, plus free silver key status with My Lowe's Rewards. It's our way of showing our gratitude to the brave people who have and continue to serve our country. Learn more now at Lowe's.com/military. 10% discount can't be combined with another offer. Exclusions, terms, and conditions apply. Loyalty program subject to terms and conditions. Details at Lowe's.com/terms. Subject to change.
Drivers who switch and save with Progressive could save hundreds, which could be life-changing. I mean, you could put that money towards that zero-turn lawnmower you've always wanted. And after using its edge-shaping technology to meticulously sculpt the face of the Mona Lisa into your grass, you'll become the undisputed king of Saturday morning lawn care, leaving your neighbor and sworn enemy Gary to question his place in the delicate neighborhood ecosystem. And it's all because you could save money switching at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates, not available in all states.
Ask any player and they'll tell you any advantage is important.
That's where we come in.
SportsGrid delivers gaming strategies and analysis 7 days a week.
The winning edge.
It's your advantage to more winning
more often.
This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. You're listening to Football Full Circle with Scott Wetzel and Ben Stevens.
John, it's something we discussed on Monday and Tuesday, and now once again we must do so on Thursday. The quarterback situation in Indianapolis. Yesterday, first full day of practice for the Colts as they get ready for week number 11 and a road trip to New York to take on the Jets. They're going back to Anthony Richardson after Shane Steichen benched the second-year pro AR in favor of Joe Flacco. It was not a one-week fix at the time. Steichen said it's the remainder of the season because we feel as though we are a playoff caliber team and Flacco gives us the best chance of doing that. And then even after the Colts weren't all that competitive on Sunday, not even coming close to covering as a 4.5-point home dog against Buffalo, and Flacco threw 3 interceptions, Shane Steichen was asked again, and he said, no, we are sticking with the plan. Joe Flacco is our starting quarterback. To only change that about 48 hours later and go back to Anthony Richardson. So, Scott, how do you make sense of what has now become a quarterback carousel in Indianapolis?
You can't, right? I mean, what is Steichen doing? He's been in the league long enough to know. What he should have said Sunday was, listen, guys, it's been 5 minutes since we just lost a football game. Give me a day. We'll figure out what we're doing next week, in a day or two. Let's just talk about this game, right? And just end the conversation. And he should have known that this question was going to come up. So instead, he answers it. He answers it like he probably, if he really was saying so, would have Flacco in there. But then I don't doubt for a second, Bauer, the GM, and the owner, Irsay, probably told him, you know what are we doing? Put the kid back in there. And now he's got to, try and save face by saying it was his decision. He talks to the GM and the owner all the time, but it was it. No, come on, please. It wasn't your decision. You told us what you really believe. So that said, it looks silly. It looks foolish. And it shows the sign of an organization that doesn't know if it's coming or going. Ultimately, Ben, listen, Flacco, he had 2 opportunities, 2 tough games, yes, but listen, it is what it is, the NFL. You got to win some games. He had an opportunity, didn't come through, so put the kid back in there. You don't want to go through this season not knowing what you have with Anthony Richardson. You just don't. So kind of like with Washington, little, maybe even more goofier, but maybe you lost the battle, Indianapolis, but you're going to win the war because you got Richardson back in there, and you're going to find out what you have. You don't want to make the playoffs with Flacco, get knocked out in the first, maybe the second round, and then what? Think you're going to go to Flacco next season? No, you're going to go back to Richardson. Yeah. So what did you accomplish in 2024 then? So maybe they were better off, as crazy as it sounds, much like with Washington, man. Maybe they were actually better off losing these last 2 games to get Richardson back in there.
And that's been the confounding thing, Scott, because we talked about it in the offseason and looking at the compelling AFC South. If teams like Jacksonville and Indianapolis were going to flirt with their 8.5 and 9.5 win totals, could they keep pace now with the Hunties, that being the Houston Texans? It hasn't really amounted to that. Houston hasn't looked overly impressive and yet is the only team in the division above 500 and thus sits in a very comfortable position as the hefty odds-on favorites and in that top spot. But Scott, really for Indy, it was one of the things that I was confused but potentially excited or intrigued by entering this year and definitely during the regular season. Entering the year, it was this. Anthony Richardson, a developmental piece, entering the NFL, did not really get a rookie season, to have those growing pains and to take those lumps and learn from it. He played in only 4 games. He only fully completed 2 of them. And then we saw some of the issues, the inaccuracy and the inefficiency this year. His completion percentage in the 6 games he has played this year, 5 fully healthy, is just a little bit above 44%. That is not even close to NFL starting quarterback caliber for the worst team around the National Football League. But again, he's only been fully healthy for 5 games this year, Scott. The injury component has been a very difficult part of it. But when Indianapolis last year, with Gardner Minshew and the offensive mind that is Steichen, pretty much had a chance, like Houston in that Week 18 finale, to win a game and win the AFC South, now a team that showed it had talent on the roster and a fan base that was like, whoa, we might have something here with this first-year head coach and moving forward beyond. They got the taste of success. but they really needed Anthony Richardson to go through his growing pains in what is his de facto rookie season. And thus, Scott, when they made the move to Joe Flacco, I could understand it. Like, hey, you're in an even 500 4-4 in a relatively weak division, in a relatively weak AFC, as we thought. You think you are a playoff team. We have seen Flacco do a lot with a little, led the Browns to 11 wins and a playoff spot last year. It did track. It did make sense. But Flacco has not looked good. We knew there was going to be some good and bad. 2 touchdowns to only 4 interceptions in these 2 spots and starts, replacing a healthy Anthony Richardson. And they have lost both of the games. And Scott, they entered 5-0 against the spread as an underdog into week number 9. Sunday night in Minnesota. Don't really keep that game close. Looked rather ugly offensively. Last week, a lot of people thought, ooh, this could be a little bit of a pesky underdog to keep this game close against the Buffalo team. Riding high. It was a late touchdown pass from Flacco to Alec Pierce, in the final 5 seconds that even made it a 10-point loss for Indianapolis and not a 3-score defeat, losing by 17. So my thought was, if this is what we're going to get out of Indianapolis, there's no point in playing Flacco. But if you return to Anthony Richardson, are you now telling your team, your organization, your city, your fan base, we don't really think we're a playoff team anymore, so we're just going to let the young kid go out there and spin it and hopefully learn from his mistakes?
Yeah, it's not old school, Ben. It's not where Monday through Friday you'd have 5, 6, 7 hours of practice time at your disposal with these players. That's just not the case anymore. You're not allowed. You're only allowed to hit once a week. You're not practicing on Monday for the most part. Tuesday's a day off. Friday's a walkthrough, and then Saturday, same thing. I mean, realistically, you only have 2 days of real practice, Wednesday and Thursday. So, you don't have, the hours to maybe work with Anthony Richardson and let him work through the issues behind the scenes. The only way you get time is actually being in the game. But I will say this, Anthony Richardson, 10 starts over his career, Ben. Team is 5-5. He hasn't finished all those games, but it's not like they're 0-10 when he plays.
For sure, and Flacco had filled in a few times when Anthony Richardson was injured early in the year, but they were 5-0 against the number as an underdog entering Week 9. We'll talk more about this week next.
The boys of summer become the champions of fall. The World Series is on its way. And SportsGrid brings you every angle. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. SportsGrid TV and radio networks are the premier streaming video and audio channel dedicated to serving the sports wagering audience. Found on major smart TV platforms and streaming on SportsGrid Radio and SiriusXM Channel 159. SportsGrid's real-time data, expert commentary, and entertaining analysis transform viewers into informed sports enthusiasts. Our weekday radio lineup begins with the early line at 8 a.m. Eastern with Ben Stevens and Donnie Rightside. Donnie joins Kevin Walsh on Money Line at 11 a.m. Eastern, followed by Football Full Circle at noon Eastern. Kaplan and crew join the party at 1 p.m. Eastern, and Pharrell Coast to Coast keeps things rolling from 3 to 6 p.m. Eastern. Get in the mix with Kevin Walsh and Game Time Decisions at 6 p.m. Eastern. Evenings simmer with Carver and Lisi, then boils over with Gabe Moritzi on Sports Rage Late Night at 10 p.m. Eastern. To find out where to find SportsGrid that's best for you, go to sportsgrid.com. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
How would you like to get high-speed internet for your home for less than $2 a day? That's right. For about $50 a month, you'll get lightning-fast internet. Are you paying less than $50 a month right now for your internet? Then call Whole Home Connect right now for blazing fast internet at $50 a month with no price increases, no hidden fees, no contracts, no upfront costs, no equipment fees. It's a great deal. And guess what? You can try it for 15 days. If you don't like it, you get your money back. But you're going to love it, and you're going to love the price. Internet for your home for $50 a month. That's less than $2 a day. Plus, no contracts, no upfront costs, no equipment fees, and our 15-day guarantee. Call now. 800-797-1292. 800-797-1292. 800-797-1292. That's 800-797-1292.
Think of us as your cool roommate that has this innate gift of somehow always picking winners and never bugs you about doing the dishes or paying rent. Sports gaming strategies and information 24/7. Get the winning edge. This is the Sports Grid Radio Network. You're listening to Football Full Circle with Scott Wetzel and Ben Stevens.
Live right here on Football Full Circle for a few more moments. So, Scott, there was a point of this week. We expected to see a couple of wily old veterans face off against each other at MetLife Stadium on a Sunday. The 40-year-old, nearly 41-year-old Aaron Rodgers and the nearly 40-year-old Joe Flacco. Now it will be the youngster Anthony Richardson and that veteran on the other side, Aaron Rodgers. The Jets are a 3.5-point home favorite. Total stands at 43.5. Both of these teams once had playoff promise. That is starting to dwindle. Indianapolis is trying to figure out what it has beyond this year with Anthony Richardson. New York is trying to figure out if Aaron Rodgers is going to be back beyond this year. Scotty was asked about this after practice on a Wednesday and basically said, yeah, I think I'm going to be back playing quarterback for the New York Jets in 2025. Scott, do you think Aaron Rodgers returns for New York next season?
Listen, I thought, Ben, he had $35 million guaranteed next year. I thought that was part of his deal of giving back some money. They guaranteed, more money for next season. But then I was reading an article this morning saying, no, there's not really anything guaranteed for next year. And if that's the case, listen, the Jets, he may want to come back to the Jets, but I don't think the Jets are going to want to come back to him, right? Why would they? If that literally is the case, how in the world could you ever sell that to your fan base? Unless, you draft a quarterback and then you just say, all right, he's going to learn 1 year over Aaron Rodgers. So that I suppose I could see happening. But I don't think so. I mean, not from what we've seen at Aaron Rodgers. And what kind of fun is he having unless he just thinks, okay, I'm going to get a whole new head coach, whole new offensive coordinator staff, right? They're all going to get blown out. Is he going to want to really deal with that? Those are all his buddies. So if I was a betting man, as we know we are, and if there was a bet on FanDuel who the starting quarterback would be for the New York Jets next year to start the season, I would not be betting on Aaron Rodgers.
I would agree with you, Scott. I don't think he is all that interested in football any longer. And that was maybe my thought about him in Green Bay in 2021. And with how this has gone with the New York Jets, I'm not sure it behooves either party to have them back together in 2025. Yeah. The Jets are in a rebuild mode regardless of what Aaron Rodgers decides to do. I have often said they have made their bed. They must now lie in it. The Jets have not necessarily set themselves back because they're going to miss out on the postseason for a 14th consecutive year. How could you set that embodiment of an NFL franchise back if that is your standard of success? I will say this, though, Scott. Some of that money that you mentioned, yes, no guaranteed salary in 2025. A lot of dead cap, but a lot less dead cap if he were to be cut or they were to make a move post June 1st. It's only $14 million in terms of dead money as opposed to being cut or a move prior to June 1st, $49 million, a difference of $35 million. I don't know exactly what that means if Aaron Rodgers individually announces, hey, my retirement. Is that just all off the books or is still some of that dead money available on the cap? I'm not a contract guy. I'm just trying to read and learn on the fly like most of you. But I do think, Scott, eventually at some point this summer, even if he is there post-June 1st, that he's not going to be the starting quarterback come September 1st or week number 1 of next season.
Yeah. And there's a lot of talk here in New York about Daniel Jones not playing anymore for the Giants because he's got an injury clause for next year. When does it get to the point with the Jets where they just say, you know what? What's the point? We don't want him hurt for next year, and we don't want him back next year. So, we might as well just throw in Tyrod Taylor and let him finish out the last 3, 4, 5 games and lose and get a top 5 pick versus maybe winning with Aaron Rodgers. I mean, somewhere along the line, you got to cut the cord, right?
And, Scott, that would change, right? The 3.5-point spread in favor of Gang Green on Sunday against the Colts. If it was Tyrod Taylor, that number would be different. And there is that added component, like, let's not get Aaron Rodgers hurt in case he wants to come back and He is still our answer at quarterback. Let's also not have Aaron Rodgers look a little bit more competitive and win football games we don't really want to win if we are going to be drafting our quarterback of the future. Might they turn it over to Jordan Travis, the former Florida State quarterback, who Scott led them to a perfect season last year and apparently is the best player in the history of college football, given where FSU is this year.
I was going to say, compared to what Florida State's doing now, he must be.
We'll see. That's what the College Football Playoff Selection Committee thought last year. Maybe they're getting proven right after all. Scott and I will be back tomorrow. Football Full Circle show returns at noon Eastern time, live right here on Sports Grid Radio. We'll set the stage for the Week 11 Sunday slate. Talk tomorrow.
Now you've done it. You found the advantage for gaming, odds, and more. But we call it the winning edge for short. This is the Sports Grid Radio Network.